I think the Speaker is absolutely right. The only thing worse than putting the country through the trauma of an impeachment is putting the country through the trauma of a failed impeachment.
So that was House Intel Committee Chairman Adam Schiff, who said he agrees with Nancy Pelosi's assessment of impeachment. But our fellow House Democrats also on board with me now is Congressman Seth Moulton. He's a Democrat from Massachusetts. He voted to advance impeachment, and he initially opposed Pelosi's bid for Speaker. He's also, by the way, considering his own run for president. Congressman Moulton joins me now. Good to see you, sir.
Good to be back.
So let me just start straight up. Speaker Pelosi seemed to take impeachment off the table. Number one, is that what you heard? And if not, what did you hear?
I'm not going to speak for the Speaker. I can certainly tell you what my position is, which is that Congress does two things. We vote on things, and before we do that, we should be debating them. And I do think that there's ample evidence out there that we should be debating impeachment. That's why I voted with Congressman Al Green.
What would that look like? What would debating impeachment look like in the House?
That means holding hearings, like asking questions, asking questions about what's going on with these hotels in Russia, what's going on with the security clearance issues in the White House. I mean, there's a long list of things that I think our constitutional responsibility demands we take a look at. However, I will also say that we shouldn't have a vote until later, until the Mueller report comes out.
What's the difference between having it as an impeachment hearing or having it as an oversight hearing, an intel hearing, a judiciary committee hearing? In some ways, you're having impeachment hearings without calling them impeachment.
Well, I think that's part of the problem.
I mean,
it's a fair comment, but I also think it's fair to say that there's enough going on here that certainly raises the question, are these high crimes and misdemeanors that qualify for impeachment? If you look back, the sorts of things that we debated about impeaching Bush or Clinton on or whatnot, I mean, these are far worse. So why are we so afraid to have that debate?
You know, it's interesting. Look, essentially buried in her comments seems to be this thinking. I may think he should be impeached. I may think Democrats may have the votes here, but there aren't the votes on the Republican side. So if you don't have the votes, then what are you doing? It's a wasted effort if you don't have the votes. What is the unintended consequence of that thinking?
I think that we're totally unprepared for the possibility that the Mueller report doesn't have a smoking gun. I mean, what happens if the Mueller report comes out and there's not evidence of direct collusion?
Well, I know what they're going to say on the Republican side.
They're going to say you didn't even consider this
case closed
before,
done.
So why would you now have this debate? Why would you have this debate now, right? So, look, to me, this all comes back to what is our constitutional responsibility. I understand that you can't divorce the politics from this, but sometimes doing the right thing is taking the politics out of it and just saying, just looking at the facts, should we have this debate? I think it's clear we should.
A lot of voters are going to say, I don't like the guy, but we have an election coming up in 18 months. Let's let the voters decide. What do you make of that?
I think that's a fair position to have, but it's also fair to say the Constitution demands that we have a debate about these things when the president does things that are illegal. And I don't think there's any American who would say that there aren't questions about whether the president has done some pretty illegal things. Now, they may not rise to the level of impeachment. Some Americans may say, I still want to reelect the guy. That's fine. That's the role of elections. But we have a constitutional responsibility in the Congress to have this debate. You know, for a long time, all during the Republican majority, they would pass bills without even having a debate. They passed the tax bill without a single hearing, no debate. They tried to repeal Obamacare multiple times without any debate about replacing it with anything. Let's not repeat that mistake. Let's have this debate. That's our job in Congress, and then we can decide how to vote.
You've been on again, off again on presidential, and you seem to be back on again. There was a moment I thought you had sort of pulled away from running. Where are you?
Well, the reason I pulled away, in the sense that I was just giving it some time, is because I had a daughter.
Fair enough.
And I said, you know what?
Good reason to do that.
And I've never been a father before. And so I said, I can't possibly make a decision like this until I understand what it's really like.
Did you get the instruction manual? Mine didn't come with one. No. They don't come with one, do they?
They don't come with one. And it's been I mean, everyone tells you it's been an amazing experience. I was always I love speaking to kids. I love kids. I wasn't necessarily a baby guy. You know, do you want to hold the baby? I don't know, I might drop it. I love
this sounds
so much. And so, but the point is, I needed to understand what that was all about before I made a decision. And I've learned two things. One, I like being a dad even more than I expected, even though, you know, she can't even talk to me yet.
All right.
And I can't believe how much I miss her when I just go away for 4 days a week to come down here. But the second piece is that it really makes you think a lot more about your future and the world that you're leaving for her. And be more invested in that.
You sound like somebody that is not running until that last second. Like, it sounded like, personally, you don't want to
It's
do
hard.
this.
Personally,
Professionally,
it
you
is
want
hard on the family.
Yeah.
But I don't want my daughter growing up in this world. And
What's missing in the field that you think you can provide right now?
I think that there's a few things that we need in the next president.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, we need someone who can beat Donald Trump. Second of all, we need someone who can actually bring the country back together again once we do. Because this country is so terribly divided that if we have someone, whether it's from the right or the left, running on the same divisive policies, the same sort of divisiveness that got the president elected, and that the same divisiveness that he has emphasized with every single move in his first term, then this country is going to be worse off. I also think it's time for a new generation of leadership in this country. We have problems that we've never faced before. The economy is changing so fast that it's leaving a lot of Americans behind. When I was campaigning for all these veterans I helped get elected across the country, I went to a lot of places where Democrats don't go.
Right.
And you see so much frustration with Washington. It reminded me of the frustration that I felt as a Marine in Iraq, where Washington was so out of touch, had no idea what was going on the ground, and weren't making decisions for our future. That's what I hear out there in a lot of parts of this country, and I think we need to be able to reach those people and talk about how we can succeed in the future, not go back to the past like the president's trying to do.
There's a couple of candidates trying to fill that same vacuum. I would say Pete Buttigieg.
I love Mayor Pete.
Who's a veteran, I think about your age.
Yep.
Yeah, you guys are these millennial veterans. Beto O'Rourke, who's a Gen X guy, but also trying to speak to this younger mindset that get out of the culture wars and that sort of thing. Would you crowd that lane even more? Or do you think that, no, that needs more animating?
You know, I don't look at this as a horse race. For me, this comes back to how can I best serve the country. Back in 2002, it was going into the Marines, even in the midst of a war I disagreed with, because I thought that was the best way I could serve the country. In 2014, it was taking on an incumbent in my own party who'd been there for 18 years that only passed one bill, because I said, if we don't take on people like this is never going to change. And ultimately, that's how I'm going to make the decision here. I've been talking about national security. I've been talking about foreign policy. I've been talking about how we have to deal with a surging China.
Most of the Democrats aren't in this field right now. Do you think that's the missing piece?
Well, I don't know if that's
Joe Biden's about the only one.
I don't know if that's the one missing piece, but I do know that it should be part of the discussion. We have a historically dangerous and reckless commander-in-chief. It's time for Democrats to lead on national security, too.
I know this sounds unfair, but the clock's ticking. You know that, right? When are you going to make a final decision?
Within the next couple months. Within the next
months?
Within the next 8 weeks. How's that?
Next 8 weeks, which is still 2 months. Fair enough. Seth Moulton, good to have you back on, and we'll be watching.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.